She didn't need love. She needed his DNA. But the moment she touched him, her mission fell apart. Captain Thalexa Kor of the Sarathian Empire stood at the edge of Earth's lunar embassy, sharp-eyed, emotionless, and cloaked in royal authority. Her skin shimmered a faint blue under the artificial moonlight. Elegant, tall, built by biodesign to be flawless, and nearly incapable of emotional attachment. That's how her species had survived centuries of war and collapse, breeding out weakness, replacing passion with purpose. But now her world was crumbling. Birth rates were failing. Genetic stagnation had begun. The ruling science caste had only one answer: hybridize. With humans. She had been sent to study Earth's mating specimen, specifically a male rumored to carry rare aggressive reproductive markers. Her orders were simple: get close, collect what they needed, leave. She didn't expect him to. Be beautiful. He stood on the landing deck laughing with one of his officers, tall and built like a war god in casual clothes. His name was Lieutenant Dax Monroe, Earth Military Diplomatic Security Division. He wasn't wearing a uniform that day, but he didn't need to. The way he moved, the way he stood like he owned the gravity under his feet, said everything. Thalexa narrowed her eyes. This is the one. She approached with practiced confidence, her long, violet cape trailing behind her like shadow and silk. Dax turned toward her, the smile still on his face until his eyes met hers. Then something flickered behind his gaze. Interest, alertness, maybe attraction? Didn't expect company from the stars today, he said, voice casual but strong. You lost, ma'am? Thalexa's voice was calm, rehearsed. I am Captain Thalexa Kor. I represent the Sarathian Empire. I'm here on cultural exchange. He raised a brow. Cultural exchange, huh? Sounds diplomatic. It is, she said, keeping her face neutral. I wish to understand human bonding practices. Dax blinked, then chuckled. You came to Earth for relationship advice? No. Physical compatibility, she corrected, without shame. That made him pause. Then he looked at her again, more carefully this time. You're serious, she nodded. Very. He rubbed the back of his neck, clearly unsure whether this was a prank or a test. So, you're trying to hook up with someone? For science? Yes, she said plainly. You've been selected as a candidate. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. And here I thought my day was going to be boring. Thalexa studied him, puzzled by his calm response. She'd expected resistance, anger, maybe even insult. But not this amusement. I will need a private space, she said, and your consent. Dax stepped forward, lowering his voice. You're not really a small-talk first kind of woman, are you? We have limited time. He tilted his head. Then let me ask one question. Is this one-sided? You just need a sample and then you're gone? Thalexa nodded. That is the mission. Dax sighed, folding his arms. Let me guess. You're not allowed to feel anything. Just cold collection? She hesitated. Correct. Right, he said, smiling again, this time slower. And what if I said no? She paused. Then I would respectfully try someone else. He studied her face for a long moment. Then something in his tone changed. Come on. There's a quiet lounge, near the edge of the base. We'll talk. She followed him, surprised by how calm he was. Not submissive, not flattered, just curious. Inside the lounge, the lighting was low. Soft blue ambience surrounded them as they sat across from each other. She explained her people's problem, the genetic collapse, the need for hybrid vigor, his role in their possible future. He listened without interrupting. But his eyes kept flicking down to her collarbone, her face, her lips. You've got the whole royal warrior priestess thing going for you, he said finally. But you're missing something, she frowned. Missing what? He leaned forward. Feeling, chemistry. You want me to Help your species survive. But not as a man, just as a body. Thalexa froze. He was right. For a second, she felt heat in her chest, an unfamiliar flutter that she couldn't name. "Let me make this clear," he said. "I don't mind helping, but not like a test subject. If you want something intimate, it better mean something." She should have walked out. Instead, her fingers touched the side of his hand, and that was the moment the mission changed. Because in that single touch, she felt everything her kind had been bred to forget, and it was all human. Thalexa didn't sleep that night. Not because she was afraid. Sarathian women didn't fear, but because every time she closed her eyes, she remembered the warmth of his hand, the weight of his gaze, the strange flutter in her chest when he spoke to her like she was more than a mission. It was distracting and dangerously human. In her quarters, she paced, checking her instruments, reviewing the extraction protocol, preparing the vial meant to collect Dax's genetic material. It was all there, cold, clinical, precise. But now it felt wrong. She had seen the shape of his laugh, the softness behind his jokes, the way his voice changed when he asked if what she wanted was real, or just a job. She didn't know how to answer him. The next evening, Dax found her sitting alone in the orbital garden, a quiet corner where artificial stars shimmered above synthetic trees. "You're early," he said, taking the seat beside her. "I didn't know if you'd come." "I told you I would," he said, "but I still have questions." She looked at him. "Ask." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, watching the stars. "What happens after this? You collect your sample and disappear into space?" "That was the plan. And now? I don't know." He turned to face her fully. "Because of the mission? Or because of me?" Thalexa hesitated. "Because you made me feel something." He didn't speak right away. Then he reached out, gently, brushing a strand of her silver blue hair behind her ear. "You're not used to that, are you?" "No." "Do you want to feel more?" Her throat went dry. "Yes." Dax stood slowly and offered her his hand. No commands, no sedatives, just quiet trust. She took it. His quarters were modest, cleaner than most, with small signs of Earth habits scattered around. A photo of his team, a half-read book, a framed patch from his Marine days. "I don't want this to be a transaction," he said, voice lower now. "So, before we go any further, I want to know your real name." She looked confused. "You know it, I told you, Thalexa Core." "No. I mean your real name. The one that matters to you. Not your title. Not your rank." She blinked. Then quietly, "My mother called me Thale. No one else does." He smiled. "Thale. That's beautiful." She stepped closer, heart thudding strangely in her chest. "And what do I call you? Dax? Lieutenant? Specimen?" He laughed softly. "Just Dax. Or the guy who's very curious about alien kisses." Thale tilted her head. "Why kisses?" "It's how humans start things. Usually." She moved, closer until her lips were just inches from his. "Then show me." Their first kiss was soft, searching, not like any biological interface she'd been trained to simulate. It wasn't efficient or strategic. It was slow, warm, entirely unpredictable. Her body responded with confusion and desire. And when his arms wrapped gently around her, she didn't resist. The protocol said the extraction should happen during peak arousal, using artificial stimulation to increase genetic output. But that no longer felt right. Because the mission wasn't about extracting anymore, it was about connecting. "Are you sure?" he asked her, fingers brushing the side of her face. She nodded, eyes glowing faintly. "I want this. Not for the Empire. For me." When he touched her skin, warmer than she expected, stronger than her own species, She felt things no data Chip had ever prepared her for. Pressure, heat, hunger, every nerve in her body felt alive. He undressed her slowly, respectfully, as if unwrapping something sacred, and when she finally stood bare before him, she didn't feel studied. She felt seen. She reached for him, tracing his chest, the shape of his muscles, the heat pulsing beneath human skin. "You burn so hot," she whispered. "And you glow like the stars," he replied, lifting her into his arms. What followed wasn't a mission. It wasn't a harvest. It was discovery. And when her body finally surrendered to the rhythm of his, she felt something explode inside her that had no word in Cerethian language. She clung to him afterward, breath shaky, heart hammering. "That was," she began. "Better than science?" he offered. "Far more dangerous," she said, trembling against him. "Because now, I don't think I can leave." He wrapped her tighter. "Then don't." She looked up, her eyes still shining. "But if I stay, everything changes." Dax smiled and kissed her forehead. "Then let's change everything." Thale woke up before he did. Dax lay on his side, one arm draped across her waist, his face relaxed in the kind of sleep only humans seemed capable of, deep, unguarded, peaceful. She watched him for several minutes, her fingers tracing the faint scar on his shoulder, a mark of battle, a mark of survival. Humans carried their history on their skin, in their muscles, in the way they touched and trusted so quickly. It was reckless and beautiful. She slid out of bed slowly, careful not to wake him, and padded across the room to where her bag sat beside the chair. Inside was the vial, the one she hadn't used, and beside it, the recall chip from High Command. The blinking red light meant one thing: she was overdue for a report. She sighed. This was supposed to be simple. A clean genetic acquisition. One sample. One night. No emotions. No complications. But Dax had ruined that plan with his laugh. His questions. His ridiculous way of calling her glowbug when her skin flushed. She activated the recall chip and uploaded a secure message. No audio, no vid, just text. Mission delay. Subject contact initiated. Secondary objectives developing. Will advise. It was a half-truth, a stall, but it bought her time. She turned off the display just as Dax stirred behind her. "Hey," he said, voice still thick with sleep. "Running off already?" "No," she said, smiling. "Just sending a message." "Home?" "Something like that." He propped himself up on one elbow, sheet slipping down his chest. "You okay? You've got that 1,000-yard stare again." She walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm fine. Just thinking." "Dangerous habit," he teased. "Tell." "Me?" she asked, touching his hand. "Why do humans keep fighting for things that hurt them?" He looked at her for a moment, then sat up fully. "Because sometimes the pain is worth it. The risk. The heartache, it means you were alive, that you tried. Even if it fails. Especially then," he said softly. "Better to burn bright for a moment than never light up at all." She looked at him differently then. Not as a target or a mission, but as a man. One who had chosen her when he didn't have to. One who offered not just warmth but meaning. But before she could say anything more, the comm system in Dax's room lit up with a sudden alert. Security bulletin. Cerethian ship detected in orbit. Unauthorized proximity. No communication attempts. Logged. All diplomatic personnel advised to remain in safe zones. Dax was on his feet in seconds, pants halfway on. "That's your people, isn't it?" She stood frozen, reading the screen again. "They're early," she whispered. "Early? For what?" "Extraction." "You mean extraction of me?" "Not you specifically," she said quickly, then hesitated. "Maybe you." "Wow, that's romantic," he said, voice dry. "Dax, no, don't. Just tell me the truth. Did you come Here to seduce me or to harvest me? Her heart thudded painfully. At first, both. But not now. That doesn't make it better. I didn't lie to you. Not about what matters. He stared at her for a long moment. And what does matter, Thale? She stepped close, her glowing hand resting against his bare chest. You do. His expression softened, but the hurt hadn't left. So what now? Do I get turned in for parts, or do we run from your entire species together? A sharp knock on the external hatch cut through the room. 3 pulses, then silence. She recognized it immediately. Sarathian scout signal. Someone's, "Here," she whispered, backing away. "If they see you with me—" "I'm not hiding," he said, grabbing his jacket. "You'll be detained, or worse." "I'm not scared of your empire." She grabbed his arm. "You should be." A moment passed, and then he kissed her, not desperate, not afraid, just certain. Then we deal with it. Together. The hatch hissed open before she could stop it, and there stood a Sarathian officer in black armor, rigid, cold, efficient, flanked by 2 guards with glowing rifles. "Agent Core," the officer said flatly. "You were expected 12 cycles ago." Thale's spine straightened, voice returning to full military form. "Unexpected complications. I am resolving them." The officer's gaze slid to Dax, shirt half-buttoned, jaw clenched. "You've compromised the target." "He's not the target anymore," Thale said firmly. The officer's eyes narrowed. "Then you're compromised." "Maybe I am. You will return to the command vessel immediately. The mail is no longer required." Dax stepped forward, shoulders squared. "Try to take me, and I swear I'll show you why humans are feared in every quadrant." The guards raised their weapons, but Thale was already moving, placing herself between Dax and the barrels. "You'll have to go through me." The officer looked at her, disappointment in his eyes. "You've made your choice." "I have." Without another word, the officer turned and walked away, the guards lowering their weapons and following. When the door shut again, Dax let out a long breath. "Well, that was intense." She turned to face him. "We need to leave, now." "Where?" "Anywhere the Empire can't reach, anywhere we can start over." He smirked. "Are you proposing, Agent Core?" "I'm asking," she said, stepping into his arms. "If you'd run away with an alien who came to steal your DNA and ended up falling in love with you." Dax grinned. "Only if I get to keep calling you Glowbug." The docking bay alarms were already blaring when they reached the corridor. Red light pulsed from every wall panel, and the station's voice echoed in calm, robotic tones that only made the urgency feel worse. Level 6 lockdown initiated. Unauthorized genetic breach detected. All vessels under immediate review. "Genetic breach?" Dax asked as they moved quickly through the maintenance tunnel. "That means me," Thale muttered. "And you." They ducked behind a cargo crate as a pair of station drones whirred past overhead. Dax looked over at her, breathless. "Let me guess, this isn't just about me being good in bed." Thale gave a humorless laugh. "No, it's worse." "Of course it is." They reached a narrow hatch that led down to a cargo elevator. She keyed in an override code, and it opened with a grinding hiss. Inside, Dax leaned against the railing and looked at her. "All right, Glowbug. Time to tell me what's really going on." She stared at the wall for a moment, jaw tight, then finally spoke. "You weren't just a random target. You're a confirmed carrier of G Primal 7. Is that bad?" "Depends who you ask. It's a rare human gene. One that boosts cellular regeneration, stronger tissue, more resilient reproductive material. In simple terms," she looked over at him, "your DNA could jumpstart the collapse of an entire sterile species. Mine." He blinked. "Wait, so you're saying I'm Space Viagra?" She groaned. "You are so much more annoying when you're right." The elevator jerked and started to move. She continued, her voice lower. "The matriarchy has been quietly running genetic extractions for years. We use agents like me to collect viable samples. Yours was different. How different? Your genome didn't just match our queen's reproductive matrix, it synced with it, like it was made to fit. Dax stared. That's either really romantic or really terrifying. Possibly both. And you were just supposed to take my essence and go? She nodded. But I didn't. I stayed, I kept the vial, and now the Empress thinks I've betrayed her. Why does it feel like we just started something that might change the entire galactic power structure? Because we did. The elevator stopped. They stepped out onto a lower deck, the underbelly of the station. It smelled like coolant and metal and burnt ion drives. Dax looked around. You sure this is the way to safety? Nope, Thalie said, checking her weapon. But it's the only path not crawling with patrols. They reached a quiet hangar where a single, older shuttle sat collecting dust. Dax raised an eyebrow. That thing looks like it hasn't flown since before humans discovered sliced bread. It's old, yes, she said. But it's off. The grid. She pulled a side panel open and began punching in coordinates. Dax climbed in beside her. So what now? He asked. We run until the stars burn out? No, she said, flicking switches. We run until we find allies. He frowned. You think anyone out there's willing to help a genetically desirable human and a rogue alien who broke every law in her empire? The shuttle engines roared to life. I think, she said, locking eyes with him, that if we tell the right people the truth, we might be able to stop what's coming. And what is coming? She leaned forward. The Empire doesn't want to breed with humans, they want to farm them. Dax froze. You mean? Yes, she said. Genetic stock, harvested, controlled, bred for essence. They've already built the vaults. I've seen the schematics. He sat back, stunned. So I'm not just good in bed. I'm valuable livestock. To them, not to me. Their eyes locked again. The shuttle lifted off, shuddering as it broke away from the station. And through the viewport, the stars opened up before them. Endless, brilliant, full of danger. Dax reached out and took her hand. No matter what happens, he said, don't let them take me. Not like that. Thale gripped his hand tightly. They won't. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't speaking as an agent. She was speaking as something more dangerous. A woman in love, with a human. The outlaw. Planet drifted like a wound in the dark. Its name was Kareth's grave, though no one could remember who Kareth was. Orbiting a dying sun, it wasn't on any official charts. Only smugglers, exiles, and the occasional bounty dodger ever landed there. Perfect for fugitives with the wrong kind of DNA. The shuttle shook as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Turbulence, slamming the cabin with enough force to knock Dax against Thale. She gripped the controls tightly, gritting her teeth. Please tell me you've landed a ship before, Dax said, eyes wide. Only once. And how did that go? We both survived. The ship didn't. He muttered something under his breath and braced for impact. They landed hard, scraping across rusted landing pads and kicking up a cloud of red dust. Sparks flew. Something underneath the shuttle gave a very unhappy groan. But they were down. Alive. Mostly. Dax unstrapped himself and looked around the planet through the viewport. It's beautiful. In a everything here probably wants to kill me kind of way. It's not the planet you should worry about, Thale said, grabbing her weapon. It's who we're here to meet. They stepped out into the wind-blown heat, walking toward a cluster of jagged buildings made of mismatched scrap. The people here didn't hide their weapon or their scars. Dax stuck close to Thale. She looked calm, but he noticed her hand hovered near her holster the entire time. At the edge of the settlement was a dive bar built into the shell of a crashed freighter. Inside, low music thumped like a heartbeat and the air smelled like oil, blood, and alcohol strong enough to dissolve bones. A six-eyed bouncer gave Thale a nod and let them through. In the back booth, under a broken light, sat a woman with gray skin and a half-metal face. One glowing eye turned toward them. Thale nodded. Hi, Mara. Mara didn't smile. And you brought a human. He's not just any human, Thalie said. He's Dax. Dax raised a hand awkwardly. Hi. Apparently I'm a walking galactic fertility bomb. Mayra let out a dry laugh. At least he's self-aware. Thale slid into the booth. We need information and protection. Mayra leaned forward. You went rogue, Thale. The matriarchy's put a bounty on your head so large every merc in this sector is already coming. I know. That's why we need to get ahead of them. Dax leaned in. There's a program, something called the Gene Vault Initiative. They're building facilities. They want to harvest humans, start a genetic breeding stock. Yeah, Mara said. I've heard whispers. Human males disappearing, quiet contracts. Rumors of artificial incubation systems being built on the outer rim. Thalie's voice was hard. It's not rumors anymore. She reached into her boot and placed the vial on the table. The liquid inside glowed softly. Myra blinked. Is that? Yes. I didn't know they'd succeeded. They hadn't, Thale said. Until him. Mara looked at Dax again, this time with something more than amusement. So, he's the match. Perfect match, Thale said quietly. There was a pause. Dax felt it, the weight of it, not just scientific, but something deeper. What does that mean? He asked. Mara spoke slowly. It means, if she were to bond with you, I mean fully bond, she could carry. Dax blinked. Like a baby? Thale stiffened. It's not that simple. My species hasn't produced viable young in decades, and even if it were possible, it would require complete biological fusion. Dax nodded. Okay, and what does that mean? Mayra smirked. Intimacy, trust, emotional synchronization. Not just sex, it's a soul-deep connection. If she lets you in, she becomes vulnerable. Thale finished. Dax sat back. And you've never done that before. Thale didn't answer. Mara stood. You'll need a ship, one fast enough to outrun half the bounty network. And a safe system. I can help, but after that you're on your own. Thale arose. That's all we need. Mara gave them coordinates and a time. Meet me in 12 hours. And Thale? Don't fall in love with the boy. As they stepped out into the wind again, Dax finally said what had been sitting in his chest. So, you could have a child? Thale stared out at the stars. With you? Maybe. For the first time in my life? Maybe. He reached for her hand. She didn't stop him. You're scared? Yes. So am I. They stood in silence, hand in hand, as the red sky darkened around them. Somewhere in that moment, something shifted. Not just between them, but inside her. Hope. And that was far more dangerous than any bounty hunter. The dawn on Kareth's grave was a dull smear of gray across a rust-red sky. No birds, no wind, just heat bleeding off metal roofs and the quiet hum of fear in the bones of the buildings. Thale knew the feeling. She felt it in her pulse as she strapped the last power cell into her weapon. Dax sat nearby, checking the coordinates Mara had given them. We've got 6 hours before that smuggler ship lifts off, he said. And you're sure we can trust her? Thale gave a humorless smile. I don't trust anyone, but she's the closest thing I've got to family. Dax looked up. Then that makes 2 of us. She paused. There was a weight in his voice. Something deeper than fear or sarcasm. She turned to him, studying the man who had gone from sample target to something much more complicated. Dax stood and walked toward her. You've been distant since last night. I've been focused. You've been scared. She didn't deny it. He stepped closer. Thale, you said bonding was possible between us, that it could make conception happen. Is that what you want? Her eyes met his. No more masks, no more layers of command or protocol. I don't know, she said. I didn't plan for any of this. I'm not even sure I'm capable of it. My kind We engineered passion out of our bloodlines centuries ago. Everything's clinical, cold. But you're not cold, Dax said softly. You're the warmest thing I've ever met, even when you're pretending not to be. She turned away, but he gently caught her wrist. Hey, I don't care if we're not the same species. I don't care if this is impossible. I just know. I've never felt this drawn to anyone, and I'd die before I let anything happen to you. She pulled her hand away slowly. Don't say things like that. Why? Because I'll believe you. A long silence stretched between them. Then the alarm light on the wall blinked. Incoming ship. Fast, too fast to be anyone but a hunter. Thale was already moving. They found us. Dax grabbed the comms. Myra, it's us, we've got company. Her voice came through a burst of static. Yeah, I see him. It's not just a hunter. It's a Zarnex capture squad. Full contract, elite level. They're not here to talk. Dax glanced at Thale. We can't outrun them, can we? No, she said. But we can make it cost them. She grabbed. Her rifle tossed him a sidearm. He checked the charge and nodded. You sure about this? No, she said. But I'm done running. They took positions in the burned-out hallway of the docking zone. Footsteps echoed, voices in a guttural, alien tongue. Then, silence. Thale activated a sonic mine, pressed her back to the wall, and then the door exploded inward. It was chaos. Flashes of blaster fire lit up the corridor. Dax moved like a trained soldier, fast, precise, fearless. Thale had seen dozens of humans fight, but this was different. He wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for her. She took down 2 Zarnex in quick succession, but the third nearly pinned her. Dax shot him from behind, then pulled her to her feet. Got your back. I noticed. By the time the corridor cleared, 5 bodies smoked on the ground, but they weren't done yet. They'll send more, Thale said. I know, Dax replied, but I think we sent a message. They limped to the back loading bay, bruised and bloodied, but still standing. Mara's ship descended like a hawk from the clouds, bay doors already open. You're late, she shouted as they staggered inside. We brought party favors, Dax replied, glancing back at the burning landing zone. As the ship took off, Thale finally allowed herself to breathe, and then she looked at Dax. His face was cut, his arm grazed, but he was smiling. You okay? She asked. I'm okay. She leaned forward, gently touched the cut on his cheek. You're insane. Only for you. Their lips met. No hesitation this time. No conflict. Just fire, clarity, and something deeper. When they finally parted, Thale whispered, That was a bad idea. Dax grinned. Then we should probably do it again. She laughed, breathless, her body still vibrating with adrenaline and raw feeling. He was dangerous. Not because he was violent or ruthless, but because he was kind. And she had no defenses for that. As the ship jumped to light speed, she realized something terrifying. She didn't want to go back to the way things were, not ever, because somewhere between the gunfire, the danger, and the kiss, she had already started to fall. The stars outside the ship streaked past in silence, a calm, deceptive calm after the storm they'd just escaped. Thale stood alone near the observation window, arms folded, face lit only by the glow of the stars. Her reflection stared back, alien and uncertain. Behind her, Dax approached slowly, quietly. He didn't speak at first, just stood beside her, close enough to feel her presence without touching. Finally, she broke the silence. We're fugitives, now. Traitors. If the Empress catches wind of what I've done. She won't, Dax said. Mayra said she scrambled the flight logs. It'll take time before anyone even knows which direction we fled. And when they do, she asked, turning to him. They'll come. They always do. My kind doesn't forgive betrayal. Dax looked her in the eyes. Then we don't run. We fight. She shook her head. You don't understand what the matriarchate does to those who break order. We were designed to obey. Engineered to be perfect tools. I wasn't built for rebellion. He smiled, soft but certain. No one ever is. But you chose it anyway. That makes you more human than most people I know. She didn't answer right away. Her mind was racing, fear, confusion, and something else. Hope. I don't even know what I want anymore, she admitted. You're a complication I wasn't prepared for. Dax leaned in just slightly. Maybe that's the point. Maybe complications are how real things begin. She laughed softly, but there was no bitterness in it. You have a way of making chaos sound romantic. He stepped closer now, placing his hands gently on her hips. Maybe that's because you've never let anyone get close enough to show you what romance really means. Her breath caught. The moment felt impossibly fragile. She could still run, still pretend it was just business, just biology. But then he kissed her, and all her doubts burned away like mist under sunlight. There, in the quiet hum of the stars, two very different beings chose each other. Not because it was simple, but because it was real. Later, wrapped in the warmth of his body, she whispered into his chest, I never told you what the bonding means, did I? Dax opened his eyes. I figured it had something to do with that little spark I felt when we touched, like something deeper, bigger. She nodded slowly. When my kind bonds, it changes us, permanently. Not just emotion, it affects our biology. Our bodies adapt. We become capable of things we couldn't do before. He blinked. You mean like reproduction? She looked up at him, her violet eyes glowing faintly. Yes, with you, it's possible now. It wasn't before. He didn't flinch, didn't laugh. He simply held her tighter. If that's where this leads, then I'm ready. You're not afraid? Terrified, he admitted, but also excited. They lay in silence for a moment before Thalia said, There's one more thing. The matriarchate wants human DNA not just for reproduction. They want control, to create hybrids, soldiers, slaves. Dax's jaw tensed. Then we stop them. Thale sat up, eyes hard now. There's a rebel cell. Deep space near the fringe systems. They've been trying to expose the Empress's experiments. I've made contact before. I never helped them. But now, she looked at him. You want to join them, Dax said. She nodded. I want to fight back. He reached over, took her hand. Then we fight. Together. Mara entered the room just then, leaning casually against the doorframe. Hope I'm not interrupting your interspecies honeymoon, she smirked. Thale rolled her eyes. We're making decisions. Good, Mara said, tossing a data tablet onto the table. Because I got coordinates. The rebels are moving. If we're going to help them, we leave now. Thale looked at Dax. He nodded once, no hesitation. She turned to Myra. Plot the course. The ship shifted gently as it veered into deeper space, toward something bigger than them both, a cause, a future, a war worth fighting. Dax and Thale stood side by side, watching the stars. Neither knew what tomorrow would bring, but they had each other, and for the first time in her engineered, obedient life, Thale felt free. She reached down, gently laced her fingers with his. Dax smiled. So what now? Thale grinned, her eyes fierce. Now we show them what happens when a human and a rebel alien fall in love. And somewhere, across the cold galaxy, Satur, matriarchate began to feel the fire they thought they'd extinguished centuries ago. It had a name now. It was called hope, and it was very, very human.